Boo!
You've got one more to finish us up tonight.
Yes, I do.
Just hit the music, see if we can get it working.
Oh, right. The name of this story is just Wendigo Encounter. I've been debating on sharing this story with anyone outside of my small circle of people that were there. But I want to share my experiences in hopes that it saves someone's life or to give understanding of what someone else has experienced. This was late fall 2010 in northern Canada. I went deep into the wilderness with my father and eldest brother to hunt for moose. We left early morning, just before sunrise, trying to cover as much distance as possible before nightfall. We traveled winding rivers and had to repeatedly portage over rapids all day. We decided to set up camp just over halfway to our destination. My father figured that we'd make the rest of the journey tomorrow. Well, when everyone bedded down for the night, I decided to go grab some firewood and relieve myself down by the bank of the river, just out of reach of the light. Out from the tree line, about 15 yards away, I could hear rustling in the bushes. I watched the area where I heard the noise and focused on that spot. I felt kind of funny / lightheaded and dizzy, and I could smell this putrid state, like old milk or rotten food. And I saw the trees start to move and morph out of the way ever so slightly, and they began to take the shape of a head and facial features. My eyes began to adjust to the darkness, and along the tree line, I could hear this voice coming from that area. I recognized it. The voice sounded like one of my relatives who had recently passed. The face took the shape of my relative. "Hello," they said. "I missed you. Come see me." I smiled and stepped forward, but stopped to analyze the situation. My relative's face stopped smiling and became emotionless. The skin began to turn pale and peel away. Chunks of flesh from their cheeks began to fall away, and I felt shock and fear overwhelm my body. Couldn't make sense of it at all, so I started to back away and move back towards camp. Didn't realize at the time that I had been walking towards the voice, and I was further away from the firelight than I intended. The voice became angry, began shouting at me, "Come here." So I started to run away, but as I looked back one more time, I saw the most disgusting thing I have ever seen. It was rotting flesh on gnawed bone, caved-in eyes, and a hollowed chest cavity. This humanoid creature was tall and super thin. I ran as fast as I could, trying to yell for help, but the fear had made my voice quiet and raspy. I ran along the riverbank. I could hear the heavy breaths of the stomping feet from this thing right behind me. I made it on top of the riverbank, and I grabbed a hold of my leg as I jumped up. I gripped and tore the grass, trying to lift myself, and yelled as loud as I could. And finally, my voice came back, and I yelled. My brother woke up. He ran over to where I was, and pulled me up and took me over to the fire. I was terrified, trying to explain what I saw, what looked like my relative, but not. I was trying to convince them that I wasn't seeing things. But my brother nodded his head and said, "I saw it too. I know." That solidified it. He acknowledged that it was real. We stayed up all night after that, rifles loaded close by. We packed up when the sun was coming up and we went back home. We hadn't shared the story with anyone out of fear of being labeled as crazy or liars. I've had nightmares and couldn't sleep for months afterwards. I could see things, dark figures looking into my window, or hear whispers while I was walking home at night. Eventually, I saw this dark figure daily. I went to a medicine man for help. I've learned that the ceremonies only relieves it temporarily. Friends have given me everything from protection pouches to certain crystals. I found out the strong possibility that I encountered a Wendigo. I learned that you encounter one and survive, and it attaches itself to you like a parasite. He mentions in comments that he was a member of the First Nations of Canada, and that his father also said that he believed it was a Wendigo by the description. He didn't see it at the time. After telling him, he said he believed that's what it was. And since then, he said that he continues to go to a shaman to try to relieve himself every so often of this burden.
A burden indeed it is.
I found that interesting because it goes back to the previous story I had spoken of,
Yeah.
where they said they had those horrible things fall upon them after encountering the creature.
Tried to lure him in.
Yeah. Which is very much like what skinwalkers will do, too. They'll
Exactly what I was thinking the whole time.
Yeah.
It was a relative, he said? The image was of a relative?
Yeah.
I think I would be a little concerned when my relative was out there.
I think it was more of like he was so overcome by the presence.
Yeah.
He couldn't process it. Like it was something that he just couldn't understand. So he started taking steps towards it to try to get an understanding and realized too late that may have been a bad idea because it almost got him. But for the fact that his brother woke up and dragged him away, it could have gone seriously wrong for him.
Somebody said they'd probably fall for it. Yeah, I could see that. And you don't really know how much time lapsed when this was happening, either when they're talking about it.
Yeah.
It could have been like a 10-second thing. It could have been I don't know, but I always wonder like how close do you have to get to these things before this curse becomes upon you?
Someone says that you have to come in contact, and he mentioned that he was grabbed. Other people say you just need to be in presence of it, like they have to see you.
Oh, he was grabbed. It said he was grabbed.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise. And the skin started falling. That was pretty creepy when the face
sort of
because isn't that what they say about skinwalkers? Sometimes there's a discrepancy in what it.
Yeah, it doesn't look right, and then if it starts to change, it's like the skin falls off. The very similar thing with the Wendigo. Then he even mentioned that it was like a tall, skinny looking creature with exposed ribs.
Yes.
Very similar to what we saw in that video. Very similar we heard in other stories. So yeah, it's really interesting when all stories start to line up to be the same. And this guy was a member of Canadian First Nation natives, the Native Americans.
First Nation is in natives. Okay.
We call them Native Americans here. They're First Nations in Canada. So yeah, if you have a Native person who is encountering this thing, and the shamans that he talks to, they all say the same thing.
How long do these sightings of these things go back in American history or history in general?
I've read some.
Canadian, I apologize, but it's like even the skinwalker stuff in American history. Like, what's the furthest you've seen it go back?
It's funny because talks about in the Appalachian Mountains in Kentucky and Tennessee and stuff like that, or all that area also have Wendigo. It seems to be a North American continent-wide curse, and it dates back at least, I've seen some mentioned in the 1700s, but possibly further. I haven't found any before that, but it could be even further back. It has something to do with anyone who results to cannibalism in North America. A spirit that inhabits them.
I need a 1700 story. Yeah, reminded me of America Stories covering some of that stuff. Makes you wonder if there's people if they came across something like that.
I definitely have in the past read some. I need to track some of them down and bring them up because any party that got separated in the winters, there was a lot of stories of Wendigo and stuff like that. Like
Wendigo, more like when to know. I don't want anything to do with that. I don't know what I would do.
It's definitely an ancient curse, though, something that was done to punish someone a long time ago, and it's spread throughout.
Maybe all the messed up stuff we did to them Indians,
I would like to find out how far it goes back, and I might end up doing some research on that and try to find some of those old stories.
Jeff Townsend Media. CG, good night.
And the question is, do I stay here? Will you be back? Are you gonna come back? Will you be back? Are you coming back?